Good morning, children. I'm back to read another story. And like I told you before, I'm trying to read to you in different places that you are in our home when you're here. So today I'm upstairs, as you can see. And of course, there are places that you get to stay when you're with us. So, tell you what, the rooms miss you. They really do. Today's story is one of my favorites, and it's about a secret staircase. And we have a secret room in our house. So, here, of course, is your play area with all your toys. But what happens when you open the door and you enter the secret kitchen? This is a room that you guys know that we set up for you to play in. See if I can get better pictures back. All kind of hidden. Your little kitchen things are waiting for you when you're able to come back. But today, I'm going to sit in our little secret room to read. So let me get situated. That was very awkward. But, oh, and as you can see, your bunnies miss you too. And your bears. Today's story of Brambly Hedge, which is written by Jill Barklam, published by HarperCollins, is called The Secret Staircase. One of my favorites. It was a frosty morning. The air was crisp and cold, and everything sparkled in the winter sunshine. The little mice hurrying along the path turned up their collars and blew on their paws in an effort to keep warm. "Merry midwinter," panted Dusty Dogwood, scurrying past Mr. Apple and the Toadflax children with a huge covered basket. Mr. Apple and the children were busy too, dragging great sprays of holly and trails of ivy and mistletoe towards the old oak palace. When they arrived at the gates, they heaped all the branches on the ground, and Wilfred tugged on the bell. So they're getting ready for something. Here they are. It's winter time, and they're gathering goodies. Lord Woodmouse and Primrose, his daughter, opened the door. "Here we are," said Mr. Apple, mopping his face. "Do you want it all inside?" "Oh, yes, please," said Lord Woodmouse. "We'll start by decorating the stairs." And eagerly the children pulled the branches over the polished palace floors, skidded their way into the great hall. Remember, the hall is like a huge room, like a ballroom. "Are you two ready for tonight?" asked Lord Woodmouse. Primrose and Wilfred exchanged glances. That evening, after dark, all the mice would gather round a blazing fire for the traditional midwinter celebrations. A grand entertainment was planned, and Primrose and Wilfred had chosen to give a recitation. That means they're going to stand up and say something from memory. "Almost," said Primrose, "but we've still got to practice, and we do need proper costumes." "Well, you'd better see your mother about those," replied her father, "and you can practice wherever you like." So here they are, bringing in the decorations in the beautiful hall, starting with the staircase of the palace. Leaving Clover, Catkin, and Teasel to go back to the wood with Mr. Apple, Primrose and Wilfred took themselves off to a corner of the hall and began to go through their lines. "When the days are shortest, the nights are coldest," began Primrose, drawing an imaginary cloak around her. "The frost is sharpest, the year is the oldest," continued Wilfred. "Look out, you two," interrupted Basil, bustling past with some bottles. "Oh, this is hopeless," sighed Primrose. "We can't rehearse here. Let's go see Mama and ask her what to do." Things are very busy, and they're trying to practice. I know that feeling. Lady Woodmouse was busy making caraway biscuits in the kitchen. She leaned on her rolling pin to listen to Primrose's tale of woe. "Oh,
"Why don't you see if there's something up in the attics for you to wear?" she said. "You could practice up there, too." And she packed a little basket with bread and cheese and a jug of blackberry juice and shooed the children gently out of the kitchen.
So they're going up to the attics just like I'm upstairs in an area that Elliot likes to call the attic.
There were a great many attic rooms at the top of the old oak palace. Lady Woodmouse used them to tidy away things that might come in useful. Baby's blankets, rolls of lace, boxes of buttons, stacks of books, broken toys, patchwork quilts, pudding claws, old saucepans, all crammed together higgledy-piggledy on the shelves. Primrose and Wilfred went from room to room, looking for a suitable spot for their rehearsal. They ended up in a crowded storeroom at the end of a passage. But it was so difficult to concentrate on practicing, for there were so many things to look at. Standing on tiptoe, Primrose reached inside the drawer of an old wooden dresser. In it, she found some bundles of letters tied up in pink ribbon, but she couldn't read the writing, and it's rude to read other people's letters. So she put them back. As she did so, she caught sight of a small key, which had slipped down at the side of the drawer.
Look at all of that. Up high and down low and hanging off of things.
All stuff that was stored there, probably forgotten about. "Look at this, Wilfred," she cried excitedly. "Let's see. Oh, it's only an old key," said Wilfred. "Is it time for lunch?" Primrose said nothing, but she slipped the key into her pinafore pocket before setting out their picnic on the floor. "Do you think this would make a cloak?" said Wilfred, his mouth full of bread and cheese. He had seized the end of a long green curtain and was winding himself up in it. As he turned towards Primrose, he caught sight of a small door that had been hidden behind its folds. "Where does this go to, Primrose?" he asked. "Well, I don't know," replied Primrose. Even though she lived in the palace, she scrambled over some boxes. "Does it open?" Wilfred pushed, but the door was locked. He peeped through the keyhole, and he saw another flight of stairs on the other side of the door. "It's no good," he said disappointedly. "We can't get in." "Well, if there's a keyhole, there must be a key," said Primrose. "I think I have it right here." And she reached inside her pinafore pocket and handed the little key to Wilfred. He tried it in the lock, and it fitted perfectly. The door swung open.
There's the key, one of those beautiful old-fashioned keys, and the hidden door.
What fun to open something that you don't know what's behind. They found themselves in a dark paneled hall at the foot of a long, winding staircase. The stair carpet must have once been beautiful, but now it was tattered and covered with dust. I'm going to show you the picture now because you can't really appreciate what this winding staircase looks like and all of the rooms that it goes past in the palace unless you see the picture. So here they are at the bottom, coming up this winding staircase that goes up and up and up and up. And you see all the other rooms opening off. Those are rooms, of course, that are in the palace that they know about, but nobody knew about the staircase. "No one can have been up here for years and years," whispered Primrose. "Shall we see what's at the top?" Wilfred nodded. Of course. So up the stairs they went, round and round, with Primrose keeping close behind Wilfred, for she couldn't help feeling a little nervous. Suddenly the stairs came to an abrupt end, and they were standing in yet another hall. And there was yet another door, but this time it was huge and richly carved. Now remember, a hall is not just a room, it's a huge room. They went up to it, and Wilfred gave a push, and this door opened. The children stared about them in amazement. I have to show you the picture now. This is what they came into. Can you believe that? And nobody even realized, or at least the children didn't, that it was up there. beautiful hall at the very top of the stairs. They were they were standing in the most magnificent room. There were columns and carvings and dark tapestries, paintings on the walls. In front of them, 2 golden chairs stood on a little platform. Everything in the room was covered in dust, and the air smelled musty and strange. "Where are we?" asked Wilfred. "I don't know," whispered Primrose. "I've never been here before." They tiptoed across the floor, leaving footprints as they went. "Maybe your ancestors lived here in the olden days, Primrose," said Wilfred, gazing at an imposing portrait. "Let's clean it up and have it as our house," said Primrose. "We could keep it secret. Come up here to play." And as she spoke, she opened a cupboard and found it full of hats. "Wilfred, look at these. Just right for tonight." A door at the end of the room led into a nursery. There was a canopied cot near the window and all sorts of dust-covered toys on the shelves. Wilfred peered inside an ancient trunk, and he pulled out a little suit with a high jacket and tight braided trousers, almost the right size for him. And neatly folded beneath it were dresses and cloaks, waistcoats and shawls, some trimmed with gold, others studded with shining stones. The children had them up one after another, and they each chose an outfit for their evening recitation, and they tried it on. "Perfect! Now we must practice," said Primrose. "Let's finish exploring first," said Wilfred. So there they were in the nursery. Now the nursery back in a palace, or in any palace, is a room just set up for the children. So it has their toys, their make-believe clothes. So pretty. There seemed to be a whole suite of rooms. There was a dining room, a butler's pantry, a small kitchen, and several other bedrooms. The bathroom was particularly grand, with a tiled floor and high windows. Wilfred rubbed the mirror clean and made faces at himself, whilst Primrose leaned over the side of the bath to try the taps, but no water came out. Taps is what they call faucets. "When the days are the shortest, the nights are the coldest," she recited. Her voice sounded loud and echoey. Wilfred joined in, and they went through their lines again and again until they had them word perfect. Outside, the red sun was sinking low in the frosty air. The bathroom was filled with shadows. "It's getting late," said Primrose. "If we don't hurry, we'll miss the log." "We'll see what that is." They picked up their clothes, and they scampered over the dusty floors to the door. This is that fancy bathroom. And even windows that open out onto a veranda. Has a large fireplace too, which I guess is very nice because it was probably going to be cold in there. Down the stairs they ran, round and round, down and down, till they found themselves back in the storeroom. They locked the door with the little key and replaced it in the drawer. Then they crept along the corridors to Primrose's room, taking care to keep out of sight. I'm going to show you this picture. I wish I could leave it on for ever and ever so you could really look at it. But you see, this is the grand hall, the great hall downstairs where they're going to be having the ball. Here's the foyer that they were decorating with the staircase. And up here is the winding staircase that is hidden and leads to the hidden rooms. But of course, a lot of other rooms are down and around the house. Primrose opened her windows, and they could just hear the caroling of the mice as the midwinter log was pulled along the hedge. There was no time to change, so they threw on their cloaks to hide their costumes, and they ran to join the crowd at the palace gates. Mr. Apple and Dusty Dogwood headed the procession with their lanterns held high, and they had things to say as well. Roast the chestnuts, heat the wine, pass the cups along the line. Gather round, the log burns bright. It's warm as toast inside tonight. The mice sang this as the log came into view. Teasel, Clover, and Catkin were perched on the huge branch as it was dragged up to the palace gates. Now remember, Those are Wilfred's brother and two sisters. Primrose and Wilfred scrambled up behind. When we say log, we really mean log. That's the log that they are bringing. The mice pulled the log carefully over the threshold, and Basil flew some bramble wine onto the bark. "Merry midwinter," he called. At last the log was here, and the winter celebrations could begin. So they have all their food and all their drink, and everybody's gathered together, and they have one great big log to start the fire with. A fire had been laid ready in the hearth of the great hall. The log was rolled onto it. Everyone was handed a cup of steaming punch, and old Mrs. Eyebright was to light the fire. She held up the burning taper. "To summer," she announced, and Mr. Apple stooped to help her thrust the taper into the fire. "To summer," echoed the mice. Remember, they gave that place of honor to Mrs. Eyebright because she's the oldest. The bright flames licked the mossy bark, and soon the log was ablaze. Then the mice helped themselves to supper, which was spread on a table near the fire, and Basil refilled their cups. "Why don't you take off your cloak, dear?" said Lady Woodmouse. "It's very hot here by the fire." "Not just yet, Mamma," said Primrose. "I'm still a bit chilly." There they are. She actually just, of course, did not want them to see her costume, because that's part of the surprise. When they had eaten all they could, they drew their chairs up round the hearth, and the entertainment began. Mr. Apple made huge shadows on the wall by standing in front of the fire. He made the shape of a weasel with a mean little eye and a snake's head, a fox, and with the aid of a curtain, he made a bat. The little mice squealed and laughed. Next, Basil played a jig on his fiddle, and Dusty did some conjuring tricks. That's magic tricks. Then they tried to pass a crab apple right round the circle, holding it under their chins, and after that, Lord Woodmouse told stirring tales of olden times. Primrose and Wilfred nudged each other. Everyone did a turn until at last Lord Woodmouse said, "And now, Primrose, what have you got for us?" The children jumped up and took their places in front of the fire. Drawing their cloaks closely round them, they began to recite. You have to see a picture of them. There they are with their cloaks drawn, which means nobody can see what is underneath. When the days are shortest, the nights are the coldest, the frost is the sharpest, the year is the oldest. The sun is the weakest, the wind is the hardest, the snow is the deepest, the skies are the darkest. Then polish your whiskers, tidy your nest, and dress in your richest and finest and best. For winter has brought you all the worst it can bring, and now it will give you the promise of spring. And Primrose and Wilfred threw off their cloaks and donned their hats with a flourish. The audience was gasping, seeing the beautiful clothes which sparkled in the firelight, and then they clapped and cheered louder than ever, and the applause went on for so long that Lord Woodmouse had to ask them to do it all over again. Look at that. Beautiful costumes which they had left hidden until the very end. At last, Primrose and Wilfred went back to their seats. "That was wonderful," whispered Lady Woodmouse, hugging her. "Wherever did you find those beautiful clothes?" Primrose glanced quickly at Wilfred. "In the attic," she mumbled, hoping her mother would not ask any more awkward questions. But luckily at that moment, Basil started to tell one last story, and everyone settled down to listen. Primrose and Wilfred gazed at the fire and thought of all the lovely games they would play in their house at the top of the secret staircase. Soon their heads began to nod, and at no time at all, they were both fast asleep. There they are. So that's our story today about the secret staircase. I can't wait for a time when you kids come back and play in our little secret room. Maybe we even need to do some of our readings in here. Until then, I love you. Stay safe. Think about Nani and Papa because we think about you. Bye-bye.